Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic was a request by a listener, and the request was based around renewing motivation. So we have done podcasts in the past about motivation, and actually specifically about renewing motivation. However, it's been about 100 days since that podcast, and I thought it might be fun to share kind of the same topic, but maybe in a different way. So the past podcast we did, number 152, okay, so podcast 152, it was with Nate Questel, who is a member of the gym who joins me on some of these podcasts. And Nate and I went with kind of like a deeper dive, kind of like a 40-ish minute podcast on the concept of like how you can renew motivation. We talked a little bit about ourselves, but we talked a lot about methods in which that you guys can use. So it was focused on pretty much like stuff for you, like general lesson applications. And then we also had podcast number 185 that Nate and I did together, and it was looking at inspiration versus motivation. And kind of the difference that like inspiration and motivation, they have a little bit of differences in the sense of one comes from within, one comes from outside. So whether you're internally motivated or externally motivated, so that can be helpful to look at. So if you want to listen to that podcast, it's very helpful. And knowing that, in general, you need to have a little bit of both. So it's okay to have external motivators. Sometimes people like kind of frown upon or say negative things about being motivated by external things. The downside to it is if external motivators are your only motivators. Okay? So you need to have an internal motivator, and then you can use external things as like refreshers or catch-me-ups or pick-me-ups, that kind of thing when you need them. But it is important to have an internal drive. Now, how do you develop an internal drive if you don't have one? Is you use external motivators just to get you started, get you going, and then over time you might start to see the positive results of what you're doing and then develop an internal drive. So if you don't have internal motivation, there's nothing wrong with you, you're not broken. So it's just sometimes you have yet to see the value of what you're trying to create as a new habit. So using external motivators can be a fantastic way to get you started, get you going, and then maybe eventually develop that internal motivation later on. Okay? So don't feel bad if you're not intrinsically, like automatically motivated by things. That's okay. That's normal. You're a human being. So you just have to find a way to work within that, though, to make sure you still get done what you need to get done. So those past podcasts, number 152 and 185, they were focused kind of on lessons for you guys. And what I wanted to do on this one is share kind of my own personal thoughts, my own journey on how I deal with motivation. And part of the reason for doing so was the person specifically asked for my opinion and like what I do. So since we have the past podcasts of what you guys can do, I figured I'd kind of show what I do and how I kind of put those lessons into practice. So the question the person asked in Cinch was, how do you keep renewing your motivation? We know that what drives us now might not work tomorrow. So how do you dig deep inside of yourself and find the ways to will yourself to move forward? So, in general, I think I got very lucky at a young age where I kind of recognized that my life without training in nutrition, so without physical exercise and without some type of attention to healthy eating, I didn't like who I was. I didn't like my life that way. I wasn't proud of myself. I didn't feel good about myself. There was a lot of negativity for me in that. So keep in mind real quick, as I'm going through all this, I'm not judging anybody who doesn't exercise or eat right. Okay, this is just my journey. But at 15 years old, I kind of had that realization that, man, I'm kind of like a fat, weak piece of crap. And I'm mentally weak, I'm physically weak, I don't look good, like I'm not confident in the way I look. Like I had a pudgy little belly that I'd always try to hide underneath my, like when I'd sit down, I'd always try to pull my shorts or pants like up over that belly roll, so that way you'd try to like quote unquote hide it. I remember I had kind of like soft chest, like man boobs, and I would always be very self-conscious about wearing anything tight because you could kind of see and it didn't look good. And I had a really rounded upper back posture. My feet flared out to the sides, like angled outward. And I really just did not like the way I looked. And it took kind of a play fight with a friend, and they had called me fat. And I just thought to myself, I was like, ugh, screw you, like calling me fat. And then I was like, had this realization, I was like, well, shit, I am fat. So it's like, ugh, like I didn't like that. So I realized real quickly that I had no right to be mad at my friend. He just said a fact. So what he said was true. It's like if he said, you have brown hair, I'd be like, okay, yeah, uh-huh. But if he said something of me that I didn't like, that wasn't his fault, that was my fault for allowing it to be true. So if I didn't like the fact that I was fat, and I didn't like the fact that somebody could call me fat and have it feel like an insult, well, that wasn't his fault for saying it, it was my fault for being it. So I started on my 15th birthday kind of addressing that and taking care of it. So that's, like I said, where I feel like I got lucky because I started young. And what helps me in terms of motivation is like to exercise and eat right. It's kind of funny in the sense to where I don't even think of it as like anything that I need to be motivated for. I don't feel like it's not. I don't view it as an option. So whether I work out or not doesn't feel like an option. Whether I eat healthy or not doesn't feel like an option. So I don't feel like it's something that I have to force myself to do. It's just what I do, if that makes sense. So what happened for me, what helped me, was I hated who I was when I didn't exercise and eat right. I hated that person. And it wasn't like, trying to think how to word it in a sense was, I was still a good person. Like just because I was overweight or I didn't eat right or exercise, I wasn't a bad person in any way. But I didn't have really good energy. I kind of like would shrug off like extra work or shrug off doing fun things because I didn't want to do them because I didn't feel confident in the way I looked, or I just couldn't physically handle doing them because I was so out of shape. I remember like when I needed to be more disciplined for certain things, like outside things, like life things, I just didn't have the discipline that needed to be good at things, to follow through with actions. I just kind of hated that part of me. So I was a good person, but I hated those characteristics of me, the lazy characteristics of myself. And I recognized that when I started eating better, I had better energy. So I also just kind of like had better mood throughout the day. Like I felt better energized to do things. I also just kind of, like your digestion was better, just everything just kind of sort of felt better. And when I exercised, I got to see, oh, here's a cool new muscle there, or holy cow, I can actually do this weight for like 20 reps. I never thought I'd be able to do that. And I started kind of building self-confidence, and I started building, improving the quality of the way I looked, and immensely in the way I felt. So I started to realize that, okay, through nutrition and training, I'm starting to feel better every day. I'm starting to like not only physically feel better, but emotionally feel better, mentally feel better. I started being more playful with my friends and having better relationships because I wasn't trying to hide myself all the time. So I learned that the me that I was when I ate well and exercised was a pretty awesome me. I liked that version of me. And then I would think back, okay, well, what version of me was there when I wasn't eating right or I wasn't exercising? And I remember that version. I'm like, damn, I don't like that version. I don't like that me. I don't ever want to be that me again. I was that me. I was that version of myself for 15 years. Now, granted, I shouldn't judge myself as a baby, but at 15 years old, I realized that so far in my life, up to that point, that the old me didn't make me happy. The old me was all instant gratification and immediate laziness. And all of that instant gratification and that momentary laziness that I got from moment to moment to moment, that just made me feel worse and worse and worse. But then, when I started exercising and eating right, I got to see a whole new version of me. I got to kind of see the me that I could be. And I really liked that me. So I started seeing it as, this is who I'm meant to be. So who I was without eating right and without training, that wasn't who I was meant to be. That was a lazy, crappy version of myself. The version of myself that if I were to live that way, I would just be disappointed my whole life. This new version of me, if I ate well and exercised, this new version of me had new possibilities. There was unlimited possibilities. It was awesome to see what was happening and what was changing within me. And I started to think of what could I truly be capable of. And I remember I had a phrase I would say to myself. Now, this isn't politically correct, and I'm probably not going to ever advertise this on social media for the business. But I kind of thought at first, whenever I looked at the lazy version of myself, I was like, oh, this is all my genetics are meant to be. This skinny, fat, mentally weak, physically weak person that I don't like every day. That's what my genetics would be, okay, if I didn't put in the work. So my mantra became F genetics. And so the real word, so, fudge genetics. But that became kind of whenever I'd work out at night. So I'd said before a past podcast, my parents got me a birthday and Christmas gift combined, and it was probably way more expensive than that, was a weight set when I was 16. So my 16th birthday, they got me a weight set and let me take over half the garage. And I trained every single day for, I don't even know, years. And so I'd go to school, go to football or basketball practice, come home, eat some kind of supper, and then go down in the basement and lift for 2 hours. And that's what I would think to myself the whole time I was exercising was F genetics. Screw this stupid, lazy, fat piece of crap version of myself. I'm going to become so damn awesome. I'm going to just grow into this new human being. So I remember I would do exercises, and it's true, it's extreme, and I'm not recommending it, but I would do an exercise, like I remember I'd do bicep curls. I'd put weights in my easy curl bar, and I would do curls until I physically couldn't hold on to the bar. So I would do like 20, 30, 40 reps. You'd kind of like rest it half on your legs, then you'd do like another 10, you'd rest it half on your legs, then all of a sudden your arms started going numb, then you'd try to like hang your arms down, but you'd never set the bar down. And I would go and go and go, and somewhere along the lines the bar would just slip out of my hand because I couldn't physically hold it anymore. And the whole time I was doing those reps, I just kept saying F genetics, F genetics, F genetics. And I just kept going and going and going. Because I knew that the only way I was going to become unlazy was to punish the lazy version of myself. So when the lazy version of myself wanted to stop the set, I was like, bullshit, you don't get to stop. You don't get to be in charge. So the lazy version of me did not get to be in charge. There was a new person in town. There's a new person in charge, and he says we're going to keep going. So you do more and more and more reps. Then all of a sudden, your brain would tell you, man, if you don't let go of this weight, you're going to tear your bicep. So then I'd just say, F my bicep. I don't need my damn bicep. Fine, it'll tear off. Just kept curling and curling and curling. Then all of a sudden the bar would fall out of my hand. So that was my victory, in a sense. So I probably had some kind of mental disorder. And I probably still have one to this day. But I did start to see myself at a very young age as separate beings, in the sense to where there was a lazy me, then there was the me that I really wanted to be, then there was the me that I was. So there was the crappy version of myself, the lazy version of myself, then there was that, like, the perfect version, like, that was super confident, looked really good, could talk to all the girls. So that's what I was thinking at the time. And I was like, man, I want to be that. I want to be that version of me. I want to be the best me. I don't want to be that crappy, lazy me anymore. And I know I'm somewhere in the middle. If I relax, if I let that lazy version win one single rep of a single workout, that's one less rep that I could have been the best version of myself. So at 16 years old, I considered every single rep as something that would take away from the best version of myself by the end of my life. So that's a pretty intense view. But that's how I kept myself, quote-unquote, motivated, was I didn't even think of it as motivation. It was just, I hated who I was. I did not like that version of me. And I kept kind of thinking, what could I be? What could I become? How awesome can I make my life if I just push this one extra rep? Or if I work out tonight versus sitting on the couch watching TV? Or if I eat this chicken breast rather than that pizza? So I just kept seeing every opportunity as an opportunity to become that better version of myself. And I just tried to take every single option I could to get closer and closer to that best version. So that's the game that I played when I was 16. and I still play that to this day. So I'm 35 now. So it's been 19 years of every day, every decision either takes me away from the best version of myself, or it lets me step one step closer. That's the goal. So, now, that can be ridiculously intense, and the few people who have heard that story think I'm absolutely insane, and that it would be hard to live that way. And there have been challenges. However, screw those challenges. Screw making it easy on myself. So when I did things that were easy on myself, I became that fat, lazy human being I didn't like. So I don't want to go back there, so therefore I'm not making shit easy for myself. I'm going to continue to try to find ways to push myself, to challenge myself, to never, ever, 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 ever accept that lazy version of myself again. Okay? So, let's think of some examples of this. So over the years, for me being just a psychopath and not always paying attention to staying hydrated, I had 17 muscle tears over the years. I've torn 7 ligaments, I've broken some bones, and had some surgeries over the years. And through all of that, I've said in the past podcast that since I was 15 years old, I've never missed more than 7 consecutive days of exercising. So for the last 20 years, I've never missed more than a week, and I've only ever missed 2 weeks. So that was it. So like 2 individual weeks. So one of them was due to a physical illness related to over-exercising, where I was throwing up every time I was trying to do anything. So I decided to take a week off. And the other time was due to emotional stress. And I just had really, really, really had a rough time at that moment in my life, and just really had a hard time finding meaning to anything. And that included working out. So I would go to the gym and try to do something, and I'm like, why the hell am I even here? What am I doing this for? And so I had to deal with those mental demons and figure that stuff out. And thankfully I was able to figure it out within a week to get me back into lifting. It took a hell of a lot longer than a week to get back to quote-unquote normal life. But those have been the 2 times that I've been out of the gym the most, were those 2 times. And think of some examples was, like I remember once I had surgery on my collarbone. I had metal inserts put in place instead of my collarbone, because I broke my collarbone 3 times, and I actually broke it the 3rd time while bench pressing. So I had to go in and get metal plates put in. I got infected, and they had to cut back in through everything, actually cut through both sides of my chest, and drain a bunch of fluid out, and I was in a full upper body kind of like chest wrap, and then a sling, and it was kind of like I was pretty shut down for a little while. However, I realized, okay, my arm doesn't work, but that doesn't mean my legs can't work. So then I tried to figure out what the hell could I do. So the very next day after surgery, I was in the gym, and I found the only machine that I could actually use was a seated leg extension, because all the other gyms, this was back when I used to teach at the university, so I was in the university gym, and all the other machines I would have had to have held on to myself, or positioned myself in a certain way to where the collarbone and the surgical stuff was all like super duper pissed off and really hurting. So I found I could sit in the leg extension machine, and if I made the weight light enough, I could do that machine without getting like any strain in my collarbone. Well, the problem was it was so light that it didn't feel very useful, so I decided to do 1,000 reps. So that was my goal. I was going to do 1,000 leg extensions, and then I was going to walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes. So I did that every single day. That became my workout. And I also took on the goal of a weight loss goal, because I figured, okay, well, if I'm not going to be able to be as active, I might as well eat less food. And this turned out to be not the best idea, by the way. When you're healing from a surgery, you still want to maintain a pretty decent amount of calories, and especially protein. So, that was shit decision on my part. But I went on a diet and actually lost 50 pounds. So, I lost 50 pounds, I think it was like 10 weeks. It was a pretty extreme diet. But that was my goal, is I did 1,000 leg extensions and 30 minutes of treadmill every single day. I lost 50 pounds in 10 weeks. And actually, after only 5 weeks after the surgery, I started back into weight training with my upper body. So I was told to wait for 3 to 6 months. Bullshit, I ain't waiting that long. So I felt like I was good enough. So I started lifting weights and being really easy into it. So I wasn't loading myself in a stretched position for the chest or the shoulder. But I got back to doing, I remember my first workout was using 20-pound or less dumbbells. And I did a bunch of variations of bicep curls. And that was about all I could really manage, because I couldn't move my upper arm very far. But I could move my forearm. So I was doing bicep curls. And I remember for 3 days, my biceps were actually so damn sore that I looked like a T-Rex because I couldn't extend my arms. So I had to go back to that damn 1,000 leg extensions and treadmill workout after that bicep day, which is depressing. But it was a way to get back into it. So if somebody hears that story and they're like, that's completely ridiculous. Like, you had surgery and the very next day you're back into the gym, doing leg extensions and walking on a treadmill. Like, how the hell, how'd you stay motivated to do that? It wasn't motivation. I just knew that the fat and lazy version of myself was going to take that as an opportunity to reclaim some ground on me mentally. And screw that. So I fucked that dude off. He ain't coming back. So I knew if I decided that it was an option to take time off, that of course I'd take the time off. It always feels easy to be lazy, right? It's easy and it feels good to be lazy in that moment. But then you just accumulate more depression, more sadness, more self-hatred, and in the long run, it's a stupid, stupid choice to be lazy. It feels really good in the moment, but it's absolutely stupid and detrimental to your life in the long term to be lazy. So, I didn't want that person back. That lazy version of myself was not going to win. This was not an opportunity for him. So I figured out, what can I do? What can I do to push myself to become better? So that's something I always ask myself in any moment, whether it's a gym stress or a life stress, is you never ever think of what's being taken away from you. You always ask, what can I do? What is still within my control? What can I still have available to me? And then can I do that infinitely as much as possible? So in that circumstance, I found out an option. I didn't say, okay, well, I'm injured, I guess I just won't lift weights. Bullshit. My arm was hurt, but there were still other functioning parts of me. I could have done grip work with my other hand for all I cared. It would have been something. So I found that leg extension machine, and then I made sure it was damn miserable by doing 1,000 reps, so that way it wasn't like, oh, okay, I did, a set of 10, whoop-de-doo for me, and give myself some kind of bullshit congratulations when I didn't really do anything. So it had to be something challenging and difficult and something that would test my current mental limits so that way I could continue to move forward in my mental limits. So just applauding yourself for bullshit mediocre effort leaves you mediocre. So don't want that. So I got to find some way to make it challenging and miserable, because it's only through it being miserable that I'll grow and adapt and become a better version of myself. So laziness lets me go backwards. If I just find a general discomfort, that stands me still. I don't move forward. It has to be something freaking miserable that you didn't really want to do. And when you're done with it, you're like, holy shit, I can't believe I actually did that. That is going to be moving you forward. So if you just do the same uncomfortable, comfortable, where you're like the same intensity you always do in your workouts, or, oh, ho-hum, I did this the last 3 months, I guess I'll do it for the next 3 months. Bullshit. You're going to sit the same. You're not going to change. Nothing's going to move forward. You're going to feel like you're putting in effort, which is horseshit. You're putting in the minimal effort, which means you're going to get minimal results. And then you feel jaded in the process. You kind of shut down, and woe is me. Exercise doesn't work for me. Nutrition doesn't work for me. Bullshit. It does the same thing to every human being. You're just not trying hard enough. So that was the stuff that I would talk to myself about. Is I knew if I was going to do leg extensions, that it had to be something meaningful enough to make a difference. And when I said to myself, I remember sitting there and I think, the weight was so light that I did maybe 50 reps. And I was like, man, I'm going to have to do 1,000 reps to make this work. And then immediately I could feel myself going, geez, 1,000 reps might be a little bit too much. And that's that lazy-ass version of myself. So as soon as I got that negative reaction to 1,000, I was like, fine. If that's the way you think, we're doing 1,000 now. So that's what I did. So if I had a negative reaction to it, then I knew that means my current lazy self was arguing. So screw that lazy self. We're doing the damn 1,000 reps now. So I've done that a couple times on leg press before. I remember I set a goal to do 1,000 reps on a leg press, and it took me an hour and a half because I picked way too heavy of a weight. It was an hour and a half of my workout. I did a couple sets of I think 20 or so while I trained somebody else for a whole hour, and then it took me an extra 20 minutes on top of that to finish. So to get that weight that I had chosen for 1,000 reps. So it took, I don't even know, 2.5 or 3 hours to get 1,000 reps in. But that was the goal. Because I remember when I put that weight on, and I was like, man, you haven't tested yourself in a while. You should do something crazy. And I was like, man, maybe I can do this for 500 reps. And then I remember I thought that, and I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. Well, that means that lazy version of myself didn't care. It wasn't fighting it. So as soon as I was like, yeah, you could probably do that, I was like, well, what are you agreeing for? If you're agreeing, that means you know you can already do it. Let's do something you don't think you can do. I wonder if you can do 1,000. And then all of a sudden you get that immediate thought going, I don't know, 1,000 is kind of crazy. Well, then there's your answer. So once my lazy self fights it and says, oh, I wouldn't do that, that becomes now the goal. So, like I said, I'm clearly insane. But it has helped me push myself over the years. So I remember like when I graduated high school, it was after 2 years of lifting weights, 3 years of exercising. I was skinny fat, 165 pounds. I'm now leaner at a lower body fat percentage, but I weigh 280 some pounds. So I've gained over 100 pounds of body weight. I remember like my 3 lift total in powerlifting, like my 1 rep max of squat, bench, and deadlift would have been about 850. I have since doubled that. I've since put up 1,700 pound 3 lift total. So I have doubled my strength since I was 18. I've put over 100 pounds of lean mass onto my body since I was 18. The only way to be able to do that is playing these stupid, insane games and doing it every damn day. So you show up every day. So that's been my goal. So there's other examples and stuff, but this is already getting long enough. But that would be my advice, is if you're struggling with motivation, is thinking, okay, who am I when I don't do the right things in life? So how does my day go when I sleep through breakfast? I'm in a rush, I'm more stressed, I don't act as nice towards my family and my friends and my coworkers. I kind of have this like looming doom on me all day because I feel like I'm running behind. And it's just a negative context to your day. So if you feel that every time you get up late, stop getting up late. Why would you want to live in the misery of that shit when you could just get up 15 minutes early and have a good day? That's the decisions you got to make, okay? Is we know that the lazy choices let us live a lazy life. It's momentarily okay, but you just get more and more anger, more and more frustration, more and more problems, more and more depression, more and more self-hate as you live in lazy ways. You become a version of yourself you're not proud of, a version of yourself that you didn't want to be, a version of yourself that's kind of sad. That like when you think, oh, I could be this, but I guess I'm stuck as this. You're not stuck as shit. It's the decisions you're making. So you got to make better choices. You have to discipline yourself to make the tougher choices. Okay? Now, how do I do that for myself? Is I first of all blame myself for everything. Everything that goes wrong in my life is my fault. And the reason why it is that way is because if it's my fault, then I can do something about it. If it's someone else's fault, it's up to them to change it. I'm not letting anybody else in charge of my life. I'm in charge of my life. So everything is my fault. So therefore, I can do something to control it and change it. So what I always do is ask, what can I do? And then you just analyze the shit out of it. You read books, read articles, talk to friends, talk to anybody you can that's maybe been in a similar situation. You gather as much information as possible, and you start making decisions, and you start moving. You start making actions. So everything in my life is my fault. So therefore, I can control everything. Now, here's the thing, is you can't control the people around you. You can't control whether some other driver T-bones your car today, and now you have to deal with a banged up car. You can't control life, okay? What happens around you and to you, but you can 100% control what happens within you, okay? Your thoughts, your actions, your decisions, those are all in your control. So, I always ask myself is, what is something I can do to influence this? So do I have to think about it a different way? Do I have to approach conversations with people in a different way? What do I have to do to control things better? So one quick example is I've read 2 books. I do audiobooks. I hate reading. I get my mind kind of drifts off and I try to physically read stuff. So I like audiobooks. So I did an audiobook of Essentialism and The One Thing. And what I learned from those books that I put into application in my business recently has been to block off time. And when I define a time, say like